Κυρίες και κύριοι, είμαστε και πάλι μαζί με το δεύτερο μέρος της εκπομπής Ευρώπη τώρα, πάντα στο Thrakinet. Το επόμενο μας θέμα δεν είναι διαφορετικό, αφορά και πάλι τη μετανάστευση και πώς μπορεί να βρεθεί μια ανθρωπιστική λύση.
Quando si fanno degli accordi bisognerebbe anche tenere presente che l'accordo non è semplicemente un accordo economico, ma un accordo che deve tenere in considerazione quelli che sono i diritti fondamentali, i diritti della persona, ma anche quelli che sono i nostri valori. Dobbiamo assolutamente rivedere Dublino. Rivedere Dublino vuol dire anche rivedere tutte le regole che riguardano il pacchetto asilo. E quando parlo per esempio del rivedere Dublino, parlo anche di quello che è l'impostazione del come ottenere l'asilo, andare oltre il primo approdo, cioè il paese di primo approdo, che in questo momento mette in ginocchio, e non possiamo ignorarlo, mette in ginocchio tutti i paesi che sono frontalieri. Dobbiamo anche mettere l'accento anche su quelle che sono le vie legali all'immigrazione, le cause profonde, quindi povertà, conflitti, ma anche altri temi come i cambiamenti climatici, che sono le cause profonde.
Υπάρχουν σχετικές προειδοποιήσεις για το πώς οι ευρωπαϊκοί κανόνες για τον έλεγχο των όπλων μπορεί να γίνουν boomerang.
The EU has gun controls in its line of sight, trying to push through Parliament stricter controls on museums and collectors, on buying firearms online and marking parts. The idea, to limit the ability of terrorists and criminals to rebuild deactivated weapons and shift them across borders.
On a une traçabilité au plan national, mais au moment où l'arme quitte un pays de l'Union européenne pour aller vers un autre pays de l'Union européenne, on a une rupture de la traçabilité, et cette rupture favorise des trafics illicites.
On Tuesday, the Internal Market Committee invited leading experts to a hearing into the impact of legislation proposed by the Commission and prompted by last year's attacks in France. Few were happy. Neither so the committee chair, who described it as poorly drafted.
If we were to just pass the Commission's proposals unamended, they would have significant impacts on museums, collectors, historians, let alone sports and hunting interests, and let alone the military reserve in some countries. So we need to work to amend those proposals.
MEPs want a better balance between the fight against terrorism and the rights of those with a legitimate case to hold firearms.
Οι ευρωβουλευτές θέτουν ερωτήσεις στις εταιρείες Apple και Google για τις φορολογικές οφειλές τους στην Ευρώπη.
Are multinationals starting to feel the heat? At a meeting at the Parliament, MEPs of the Special Committee on Tax Rulings were primed and ready to take a bite out of Apple and Google.
When small and medium-sized enterprises have a tax burden that are 30% higher than multinational corporations, then there's something wrong in the system.
Across the EU, investigations are ongoing to get companies to cough up for unpaid taxes. Year on year, EU countries lose €1.1 trillion through corporate tax avoidance. But what multinationals do isn't illegal. They simply make use of national tax incentives.
Google and Apple tried to give a wrong impression about their tax behavior. They were quoting they are paying globally a fair share of tax, which is true because they pay taxes on the profits they book to the US. But Europe basically is left without a proper tax base, and about that fact they were not ready to speak openly.
The Parliament is ramping up the pressure on companies to disclose their earnings and the amount of tax paid in every EU country that they operate in. An anti-tax avoidance package is set to be rolled out in April. But any legislative changes to close tax loopholes ultimately lies in the hands of the very member states that multinationals made the deals with.
Ας παρακολουθήσουμε τώρα μια πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα ζωντανή συνομιλία στο Facebook με ευρωβουλευτές για την προσφυγική κρίση.
MEPs harnessed social media to reach out to citizens on one of the big European issues of the day, the migration crisis. In the spotlight for a 45-minute live Facebook chat, Socialist MEP Sylvie Guillaume and her Liberal colleague Jean Arthuis, both from France, a country facing pressure to increase the numbers of refugees it receives. What did they want to transmit?
La nécessité pour les Européens d'avoir une vision commune.
Ce que j'aimerais faire passer, c'est d'abord une meilleure connaissance de ce qui est en train de se passer en Europe et aux frontières de l'Europe.
Questions and demands for action fell thick and fast. How much of a blow is a temporary suspension of Schengen? Should sanctions be imposed against countries not accepting refugee quotas? So, how did it go for them? What was the toughest part?
Moi, j'ai trouvé qu'il y avait une question plus compliquée que les autres, qui était celle qui demandait comment on pouvait faire pour faire en sorte que les gens comprennent qu'il fallait accueillir des réfugiés alors qu'ils ne veulent pas. Et c'est vrai que c'est compliqué à faire comprendre que c'est à la fois une obligation morale, mais que c'est aussi pour faire en sorte de faire vivre les valeurs européennes.
Il y a une sorte de peur de l'autre, peur de l'étranger, tentation de se replier sur soi. Or, ce que je m'efforce de dire, c'est que nous sommes dans la globalisation, dans la mondialisation.
Οι πολυεθνικές εταιρείες υπερασπίστηκαν τις θέσεις τους ως προς τη φορολόγηση ενώπιον του Ευρωπαϊκού Κοινοβουλίου.
MEPs on the Civil Liberties Committee proposed an overhaul this week of the so-called Dublin rules on asylum, which say the country a refugee arrives in is the country tasked with their asylum request. They want a central system for requests, including member state quotas. It passed by 44 votes to 11.
It is natural that the Dublin regulation has very negative connotations because what it places is a disproportionate burden on member states that are at the periphery.
As an EU summit on migration began in Brussels on Thursday, Martin Schulz, President of the Parliament, met with King Abdullah II of Jordan and the Cypriot President, Nikos Anastasiades. Meanwhile, MEPs harnessed social media to reach out to citizens on the crisis. French MEPs Jean Arthuis and Sylvie Guillaume led a 45-minute live Facebook chat and after reported lively, challenging and connecting exchanges. The European Commission has gun controls in its sights, demanding stricter controls over museums and collectors and on buying firearms online. The idea is to limit terrorists' ability to rebuild and shift weapons across borders. At a public hearing held by the Internal Market Committee, leading experts were wary. MEPs want a better balance between the fight against terrorism and the rights of those with a legitimate case to hold firearms. Big-hitting multinationals IKEA, McDonald's, Google and Apple were called by the Special Committee on Tax Rulings for their stance on new proposals on corporate tax, designed to close loopholes and arrangements that allow companies to slash their tax liabilities. Scarcely surprising that their representatives weren't keen on several key elements, like country-by-country reporting of profits, taxes and subsidies, and making them public.
Google and Apple tried to give a wrong impression about their tax behavior.
On Wednesday, MEPs on the Employment Committee supported calls for a rewrite of legislation on parental leave that goes back to 1996 that they consider out of sync with today's economic and social climate. This is a parliamentary initiative which the Commission doesn't have to follow, but it's supported by several major union and social organisations.
Ο ακτιβιστής που πρωτοστάτησε στην ακύρωση της Συμφωνίας Ασφαλής Λιμένας μεταξύ Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών Αμερικής εξετάζει προσεκτικά το κείμενο της ασπίδας προστασίας.
Until October 2015, the so-called Safe Harbour Agreement was supposed to govern the privacy of EU citizens' data transferred to the US. But everything changed with him. Max Schrems wanted his data back from Facebook and successfully prompted the European Court of Justice to invalidate Safe Harbour.
Max Schrems, hello and welcome. You effectively, let's say, kill off Safe Harbour. So how would you describe today my data? Is my data safe?
What we see is different trends. A couple of companies are moving data back to Europe where it's not subject to US law, which obviously is typically the better choice. It really depends on the member state as well where it's at. There are cases where they implemented new limitations, for example, standard contractual clauses, which allow much less data usage in the commercial sector especially than Safe Harbor has done before. So there are some improvements. The problem is that we would need a replacement for all this. And the replacement that the Commission has proposed right now, called Privacy Shield, is basically Safe Harbor once again.
Privacy Shield is the word today. It is supposed to replace Safe Harbor, which doesn't exist in theory anymore. Well, where are the weak points? Because you said it didn't change anything, it's the same again. Are we taken for fool? Or?
Basically, yes. Unfortunately, that's the situation. We have two different main issues. The one side is government surveillance. Privacy Shield doesn't change anything on it. There is an ombudsman that you can address, but she's only going to tell you that everything is fine or not, but she's not going to tell you anything about your case. They're not even going to tell you if you were even subject to surveillance. The other issue is the commercial sector. So what, for example, Facebook or Google can do with the data internally. And there we have teeny tiny limitations, where as a lawyer you only need 2 lines in a privacy policy to override them anyways. So that's very interesting, as the court has requested essentially equivalent protection from the Privacy Shield. It doesn't give it in either one sector, not in mass surveillance, but also not in the private sector.
If we go back just to your years of fight against Facebook. Of course, Facebook is not against Facebook. It's about the issue of data protection. How do you see the future now?
And in the long run, the big question is really in Europe: are we enforcing our right to privacy, or are we continuing to kind of put it and post it everywhere and say we're these great, privacy protectors, but in reality we're not doing anything about it? And that may change in 2 years when the data protection reform comes along. Mainly because we have no penalties. In Austria, the maximum penalty in my home country is 25,000 euros. So basically, if you ask a lawyer how to comply with the law, it's going to be much more expensive as a company than just breaking the law. And that's what we did for a long while, because privacy was more seen as like a consumer rights, it would be nice to have thing. But since the Lisbon Treaty, it's a fundamental right in the European Union, and we haven't really caught on to that so far.
But okay, you studied in the US. To change it on the other side, the US would have to change something. If they want to change something, they have to change the Patriot Act. The EU will never have enough pressure to make them change the Patriot Act.
That's a big question if you at least get certain limitations, because on the other hand, you got to see that the Silicon Valley is one of their biggest exports, basically. If they have the biggest market in the world, which is the European Union in the end, blocking them effectively because of all these surveillance laws, there would be a lot of pressure from the Silicon Valley and Washington saying, your surveillance laws are damaging our international business. And I think this would be the pressure point to use. Unfortunately, the Commission has basically given in before that.
Let's go back to Facebook. What should I do to have my data safe on Facebook?
It's a question where I don't have any answer to, because basically if you're not stupid online, which most people aren't, if they're not posting their naked pictures, you don't have a lot of possibilities to limit it. Basically, companies are trying to tell you you're in charge of it, but in fact you're not. Your friends are posting your data, colleagues of yours are uploading your phone number. You don't even have to be a member of Facebook that they have your data and have a profile on you. We call it shadow profile. So the idea of you as a person being able to change something substantially is, I think, wrong. I think we could possibly change something through legislation. The European Parliament has pushed a lot for the data protection reform, and I do see that this would actually be a substantial change. Really putting that on the individual user is something that I think is very unfair, because no one, not even tech experts that do that every day, really know what these devices do. How should the average guy on the street make this informed decision?
But one more time, is the word data protection even possible today?
I hate the word. It's about informational self-determination. It's about you being in charge, who knows something about you, who can use your information, and who is making money off your information. You should have all the choices. You could be as naked and not public as you want to be on the internet, but you got to make the choice. It's not someone else.
Max Schrems, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Κάπου εδώ, κυρίες και κύριοι, ολοκληρώθηκε ακόμα μία εκπομπή Ευρώπη τώρα. Πάντα στο Thrakinet και σε συνεργασία με το Europal TV. Μέχρι την επόμενη εβδομάδα που θα τα ξαναπούμε, να είστε όλοι καλά. Καλή σας νύχτα.